Hello world, it's sammykingx. Now in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to parse files from your API endpoint. Now this is not the generic ones you see on YouTube because they teach you how to parse files that you have on disks. Now this is different because you are going to be receiving files from your front end and you are expected to parse out files. Either you are populating that particular data to a database or you are sending it to a third-party service, whichever way. But I'm going to be teaching you how to do it like a pro. Don't miss this. See you right after the intro.
Alright guys, welcome back. So quickly let's get straight into the video. Alright, so for me to do this, first I will need to create a directory. Let's call this directory API file parser, and then after creating the directory, I definitely want to cd into this particular directory. Okay, so now that is done, then I will now want to create my virtual environment so that I can install my packages there. And this is how you create your virtual environment when you are on the Linux terminal. But before you can actually run this, please take note that you should have the Python 3 venv package installed on your Linux terminal. Now if you don't have it installed, you could just basically do something like this: sudo apt install python 3 then venv. You could just do something like this to install the Python 3 venv package, and once you have that installed, then you can come here and run this particular command, and then this is going to use the virtual environment module to create your virtual environment with the name venv. So you could decide to substitute venv for anything, but for me I just want to leave it as venv. So that will be the name of our virtual environment. So once this is done, let me come here and look at this. So currently now you can see I have only one file called one folder called the file parser. Now if I look at this, you see now I have this my virtual environment. So I'm going to activate my virtual environment. So now that it's activated, now that my virtual environment is activated, now I'll need to proceed in installing the required package for us in building this particular project, or building this particular API. So definitely, because we are going to be building an API, so definitely we are going to be needing a web framework. So for this particular tutorial, I have decided to go with Fast API. Reason being that it's much more newer, it's much more faster. Not just that, I kind of noticed that there is not enough quality tutorial around the Fast API web framework. The ones you majorly see are for Django and Flask. That's because they are much more older, so many people have brought out in-depth tutorial on this framework. But when it comes to Fast API, it's not really that in-depth. So my goal here is to expose you to this framework and how best you can actually use it in building your own application. Mind you, I've also used this particular web framework in building and deploying 3 projects that are in production actually. So yes, I definitely have a good understanding about how the Fast API web framework works. So I'm going to be using Fast API. So pip install Fast API. Okay, now after Fast API, I definitely want to install the ASCII server, which is, I'm going to be going with UVCon, but you could also decide to go with Hypercon. That's left to you to decide. I'm going to be going with UVCon. Now because we are also going to be dealing with file upload, definitely we want to install the Python multi-path package. Very important. Now these are for this, actually these are the three major ones that you need. Now because me personally, now I want to be able to read and parse CSV files. That's what I want to just, because I just want this to be as quick as, I just want it to just be as quick as possible and also detailed. So I'm going to be showing you how to accept file, a CSV file only from your endpoint, and parse that particular file and display the content. Let's say in a situation whereby you are building an application and then you will require something like that, or let's say you are building an application, or your job is to create an endpoint that will accept a file and then upload it to third-party service, something like your Google bucket or your Amazon S3 bucket. Now this concept will definitely come in handy. But then you also decide to go with Flask or Django. The concept is still pretty the same. It's just the difference here. The difference here is just the web framework. So I'm just going to be installing pandas again because of my own situation. Yeah, if you are going to be using those third parties, if you're going to upload it to those third-party providers, which majority of the time that's what I do, you will not need these pandas actually. Or let's say you actually want to accept files or from your endpoint, then convert and serialize it to your database, like save the content of the file to your database. You could still do something like that too. Okay, so with that said, I'm just going to install this and then I'll pause the video here and wait for the installation process to be completed. Okay. Alright, so our packages are done installing, so I'm going to clear that. Now that we have our package installed on our virtual environment, so now let's proceed in creating the application entry point. So I'll call this main.py and press I to enter my inserting mode, and then just import the fast API, which is basically similar to the way you do it in Flask. Okay, then I definitely want to create my fast API instance. Now many tutorials, they kind of stop here when they are teaching you about using fast API. They kind of stop here and then just tell you do something like this, and then you go and start using this app object to create your endpoint. Now if you check them, when they are actually doing active development, they don't do something like this. Actually, they don't. Now instead of you doing something like this, you can actually pass a keyword argument to this your fast API instance to kind of customize the way you want your fast API instance to be. Customizing things like passing in a title, passing in a summary, passing in the license, the version, and all those stuff. You can basically do this as keyword, but to pass that as keyword arguments to this fast API instance. So this is what I'm saying. You could basically do something like this title, and let's say the title here is our API file parser. Sorry, this should be in caps, and also the F should be in caps. Then you could just say summary as keyword argument. Then just pass in your summary. So let's just say this is this summary for my API. Then you can basically do something like this. Let's just break this into two lines to make this very much readable. Mind you, I'll be dropping a link to the GitHub repository on the description. I will be pushing this file to GitHub, all the source code to GitHub, and then I'll be dropping the link on the description to serve as a resource for us to use. Now, if you are new to the channel, kindly subscribe and turn on the post notification bell. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. I love you guys. Alright, so now that we've actually created our fast API instance. Now we're going to be using that particular fast API object in creating our endpoints. So it's basically the same the way you do in Flask. It's basically the same. So just the decorator of your app instance, and then the HTTP method, and then you specify the endpoint. So let's just create a single / here to represent the root. Now in fast API, remember you can create a synchronous and asynchronous function. For those who are new to fast API, I apologize, don't worry. I'll be making an intro to fast API in the coming days, and then I'll do justice to that. But then for those who are not new to fast API, we do know that you could create a synchronous and an asynchronous function, right? So for now, I'm just going to be going with a synchronous function, and then let's just call this the index, and then let's just say this will not be accepting any arguments. Call this the index of app. Now make your function handler very much descriptive, please. Okay, so I just want to return a dictionary which is going to be converted to JSON by the Pydantic, which is baked in into Python. Which is baked into Fast API. So let's just say I want to return. Let's just say I want to return a message of connection successful. That's all. Let's just do this and then let's run. You see that we by doing this we already have a basic API. So because we are going to be using this now for our server, then I'll just want to come here and open my main and cd into the API via Parse, then open the main.py. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and say the name of my ASCII server, which is uvcon. Then main is going to signify the name of the application, the name of the file, the name of the application entry point. That means the file which is your entry point of the application, and then colon the fast API instance. Now for us we used app. If you had used another thing there, you will need to change this to app. Then that's just then say host. You say host. We use this as our host. Then again ports. Then you can say ports. Let's use port 5000. Although I have ports 55030 open, but there I just want to use port 5000 here, and then that just reload, so that anytime we make an update, our server is automatically reloaded. Okay. Let's see. Host ports. Oh, I did a 3 instead of just 2. Okay. Oh, great. That's true. So I made a mistake here. So now you can see it's easy for me to rectify issues here. That's the beauty of having. So you can see now immediately I did those updates, you can see it automatically reloads because I saved it. It has spotted it, automatically reloaded, and you can see application startup complete. So if I open a new browser now and I do localhost 5000, you can see I have the MSG connection successful, which is coming from this guy here that we did sent here. So you can see it here. Again, if we come to the docs, which is the Swagger UI, if we come to the Swagger UI here, you can see we have this. Now you can see the title which we specified, it's here. The summary, it's here. If you also specify the license, you see it's also going to be shown here. You also specify the name, the URL, the mail address, the URL. You see they are also going to be, so your API documentation is just going to be feature like very very rich and very very easy for other developers to read, understand and consume without you even being there, right? Okay, so now that we've been able to arrive at this point, so the next challenge for us now is to now go and create this API and this our file endpoint on our API that is going to be accepting that particular file. So this is what I'll do. Alright, now I need to create a new one. So definitely this is going to be a push because we are sending a file, right? So definitely going to be a push request. Now for the endpoint, let's say this should be upload file, and then we are going to make this asynchronous. The reason why we are going to be making this asynchronous is because of the fact that we are going to be reading the file data that we get from the front end or from the user, and the reading of the file is going to be done asynchronously. As such, we will need to await it. That is the reason why we are using the async, because you do know that you cannot use an await in a synchronous function. So that is the only reason why we are using async here. Alright, cool. So let's proceed. Then call use file, and then the upload file object. So the upload file object is actually coming from the fast API actually. Okay, so now that we have the upload file available, so let's just write a short description or uploads file. Please make your own case, make yours very very detailed, and please, to get the best out of this tutorial, as you watch, kindly do them. Don't just watch for the fun of it, do it. It's very very important so that it sticks with you. Okay, so now that we have this, so let's just return the same the way we did in that place, and then just say status. Now in this case, so status in this case should be upload section. So let's do something like that, and then now you can see the application is automatically reloaded. Now if I reload here, you can see I now have a new endpoint. Now if I click on it, now you see the reason why we actually installed the multi-path. This is the reason why we actually installed the multi-path. Okay, now if I click on the try it out, and I click here to select a file, let's just click here, open, and then click on execute. You can see I already have the response upload files, upload success. So that's because on this guy here, you are basically not doing anything with this our file. Actually, you're basically not doing anything actually. So now let's begin to do something now inside our endpoint now. So again, remember that in your endpoint you should keep it as minimalistic as possible. Don't write unnecessary codes actually. So now when you are building this kind of application that you are going to be accepting file, it's very much important that you know the file types actually that you are going to be accepting, because with that now that we just did, that means we are accepting any type of file, be it video, audio, GIF, so long it's a file. We are definitely, even if it's an executable file, is a SQL file, stuff like that, we are definitely accepting it. Okay, so there is a need for us to actually check if what will the media type or the file type in which we want is what the user is giving to us. So we will need to create that kind of utility. Now I can actually decide to write this particular form, the code that will do that for me in this my particular route handler, but that is not actually best practice. So I'm going to be creating a utils file, and then I'm going to be putting a function there, and then I'm going to be calling it on this my main.py. So I'll come here, seed into API, then create the utils.py file. Definitely I want to from fast API here, then I want to import the HTTP exception, because I want to import the HTTP exception because if it doesn't meet our standards or our criteria, I want to raise an exception that will end the request response cycle, that will just end the request, which will be the active session of the user. So me raising that exception puts an end to the user's requests for that particular time. Okay, then definitely want to create a global variable called allowed file types. Now another challenge: how do we know the allowed file type that we want? Now this will bring us to the concept of MIME types. Okay, now with the help of MIME type, we are able to determine the type in which a particular file belongs to. Now it's not compulsory you know all the MIME types that are out there. Personally, I don't know all of them actually. The only one I know is image /png, image /jpeg, text /csv, text /html, application json. Those are the few, and as well as other, those are the few MIME types I know, but there are other ones there, so you don't really need to go cram them. You just need to just know the extension, the file extension that you want, and then get the equivalent MIME type. So now there is this resource that you could use. Again, I'm going to be dropping a link to these resources on the description, as well as on the GitHub repository readme. So I will advise you to go check it out. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to create a new type and type all MIME types. I don't know why this alright, so then so you could come to this particular resource by MDN, and then you can see all the file extensions and their equivalent MIME types. So for me now, since I want a .csv, I want to allow only a .csv. These are the this is the MIME type. So what you just need to do is to copy and then come in here. I want to put it in a tuple, but you can also decide to put this in a list. I just want to place that there to specify that I am only accepting CSV file, and then I want to now create this function called check file that is definitely going to be accepting. I'm going to be accepting a file. I can also decide to type annotate this also with upload file. That means if I'm going to be doing this too, I definitely want to import that too from fast API. Okay, then I should check the integrity of a file. Now I'm just going to say if the file now dot content type, that means if this particular file, if we check, if we use the content type method, if we use the content type attribute for this particular file, and the return value is not in our allowed file types, we definitely want to do something, and that thing is to raise an exception. Remember, I said that this exception want to raise an HTTP exception. Remember, this exception is going to end. It is a lower case this x. Remember, this exception is going to end the request of the user or the client. So we're going to raise an HTTP exception. Now this brings us to the concept of status code. Now, to many people, they can decide to return a 400 status code, right? But personally, returning a 400 status code, it's not, for this particular case, is not really ideal. Now, a 400 response code signifies a bad request, right? You could actually argue it, right? But for this particular type, the best you could actually return here is the HTTP 415 status code that says unsupported media type, actually. Now that is much more better, because HTTP 400 badge request is more or less general. And remember, when you are returning a response status code, you want to be as specific as possible. There are situations whereby returning a 401 is not ideal. Returning a 403 is much more better, even if you can return a 401. Okay, I just want to point that out. So instead of you returning a 400, you want to return a 415. Sorry. When we return a 415, then the detail now should be, file type not supported. This should not be. Now if you do this, now this will definitely work. However, personally, I don't do this. Actually, for tutorial purpose, I can actually tell you to do something like this and it's going to work, but in practice, I don't really do this. Actually, this is what I do instead. I import status from my fast API, and then instead of me just do something like this, and then I do something like this: status then HTTP 415 unsupported media type. This is basically what I do. Now you can see this is much more professional and much more clear and easy to understand when you are reading it than just writing 415, which will still work, but it is not being too descriptive. Okay, so I just showed you what you can do and what I personally do. Remember, my aim here is to get you comfortable in handling big projects. When you know you are building an application, you know exactly what you are doing. You are not scared of whatever challenge you might face along the line, because really building an application will actually look easy, but then when you start it, you know it's very hard, and when you start it, you are not able to resolve some issues, and your employer tends to look at you as you being incompetent. Actually, that's the way it is in practice, actually. Okay, so now once we do something like this, now remember it's on our utils, so definitely I want to come into my main.py. Now you can see the benefit of actually splitting your screen. Then we'll definitely want to import my utils and then utils.check file, then passing the file I returned, I actually got from my upload. Right now, if I do something like this now, once the file comes in, I'm definitely going to check this. Now, another way you can actually do this is you can actually create a middleware. I have actually done that, actually creating a middleware that will intercept this. But I think I thought about that and then I realized that is a little bit advanced, actually. So let's just make things simple. And cool for us. Okay, so I'm going to save this here, but first let's just check this if all is well. So from fast API import, this and upload file. Okay, allow file types. This is text or CSV. Check file. Blah blah blah. Alright, so this is cool, and this is also cool. So come back. Alright, so coming back to this utils now. Okay, so if I come back to this to reload now you can see I have this upload. Now if I click on try it out and then I select this file parser again, now remember this file parser is not a CSV file, it's a Python file. If I click on execute, now you can see I have on the error code, which is unsupported media type. This you can see is a 415, and then the detail is file type not supported, right? Okay, so now that we've been able to, so this is the way in which those big organizations or those big applications can specify the allowed file types, and then they will communicate this to the front end people, and then the front end people will implement that on their own front end. So when you try to upload a file that is not allowed on the application, you even first get notified from the front end. That's because on the back end it's not allowed actually. Okay, so let's go back to our application. So now we are checking for this file. So the next thing we will now need to do, again, thank you, I just remember now, if you are going to be allowing file upload, you should know that the maximum file size that you can send on a single request is actually 5 MB. So when you are sending file that is greater than 5 MB, you want to break them down in chunks. Again, that particular concept is beyond the scope of this particular video. Now if you are interested in learning how to do that kind of thing, send me a mail or send me a DM, and I'll be very much happy to guide you on it. Okay, so now that we have actually been able to create a function now and call it on our route handler, now we'll now need to pass that particular file. It's very important, right? We'll now need to pass that file. So cd API, so I'm going to use this here now. So cd API, then let's create our file reader. Let's create our file reader.py. Now this is our file reader. We now want to create the function that will be responsible for reading this particular file and doing the necessary things we want to do with it. Now for me, I want to read a CSV file and return the content of the CSV file to the user, and also print it on my terminal. Okay, so definitely I would come in here. Now that I have my file, now I will now need to read this file. Now when you are reading a file, please note that once you read a file, whatever the MIME type of that file, it's being read in bytes. Now in other words, you are now getting the binary representation of that particular file. So for me now, I'm having a text file actually. So if I read this particular file now, what I'm going to be getting is the text, but in bytes form. You know, in Python you have your ints, you have floats, you have string, and then you have bytes. Okay, so just want to let us know. So let's just call this binary data. And then this is the reason why we actually made our function asynchronous, because of the await. So it's a file.read, because this is going to be done asynchronous. As such, we will need to await it until it's done. Okay, if not, it's just going to come in here, skip this guy and return, then come back and at a later time to come and read it and then save this here, and then we definitely don't want that. Okay, so now that we have read this, now we will need to send this particular variable or this particular binary data now to a function that can now make sense of it. Now, if you are going to be uploading to a third-party service, now this is where you will now need to write the code that will upload to a third-party service. Now, mind you again, this particular file is not existing on your file system, which is kind of part of the reason why I decided to make this video, because many videos that you see, they assume that the file is existing on your file system. So you will not see something like with open read with open as this, then you are not reading or you are writing or you are not doing it. No, this is not on your file. Actually, is in memory. It's coming from the user, which is going to be held in memory. Very important. As such, the way you now do it is a little bit different, or it's very different. Actually, it's very different. Not even a little bit different. It's very different. So first, let's say our file reader. Then let's call this read file, and it's going to take our binary data. So come here, then we'll create the read file. Don't forget, I'll be dropping a link to the repository and also to the resources I actually used in building that I just showed you in writing this particular code. Okay, so definitely I'm going to be accepting. So I think I missed a def here. Yes, definitely I'm going to be accepting the file data. So this should be in lowercase, and then reads a file. So for now, let's just put parse. Now we need to import the IO module. Now the reason why we need to import the IO module is because, like I said, this particular guy is in memory, not on our file system, and majority of all those SDK kits, or majority of all those processes that will require you to either upload to a third-party service or serialize or send to a database and all that, they will need you to have a file-like object. Now we don't have a file-like object. Actually, no, we don't have a file-like object because it is not on our server. Now, by importing this IO module, and then by using by importing this IO module, and by using this IO module.bytes IO, this byte IO would take the binary data and then return. This is file data, and then this is file data too. So this would take in this particular file data and return a file-like object. Now it is with this file-like object we could now use in uploading to our third-party service. Like if you are uploading to Google Drive, now if you are going to be using their documentation, you realize that there's a part that they send media upload. Now that particular media upload needs a file-like object that's on the Google documentation. They assume that particular file is existing on your file system, but in this case now it's not on your file system. The same thing too when you're doing for when you're uploading to the AWS S3 bucket. You get. So now this particular IO.bytes byte IO is going to create this file object. Now it is with this file object now you can now decide to do what you want to do with it. So for me now, I want to now use my Panda to read from it, because if you are familiar with using Panda, you realize that this Panda requires the file path to the file. Right now I don't have this file on my server, so instead of me doing that, I will now pass in this file object that with the help of this io.byte io created a file like object from my file data. So even if it was an audio file that we sent, once it's being read, that audio file is converted to its binary equivalent. Now when we send this to about io, it's going to return a file like object of that particular audio file that we can now work with. Okay, now a shortcut for you, or I won't call it a shortcut, it's like an alternative, is for you to receive that file, write it to your file system, which is write it to disk, then at a later point read from that file and then perform your actions, then delete it. But then that is an overhead actually. Okay, all right, so now that we've done this, now what we will need to do now is to now use my data frame. Now if you import io, then I also need to import the pandas. So let's say pandas, import pandas as pd, just as the convention says, as pd. Now I could also decide to do something like this pandas, but by convention on the pandas documentation we realize that they always do it like this, so let's follow the norm. All right, so pd, so I'm just going to use the read csv method there, and then passing my file object. Now when I read, it's going to return a data frame. Actually it's going to return a data frame, and then I could decide to print this data frame to my terminal, which is my server that is up and running here. And then I also want to return this data frame, but again I don't want to return it just like that. I want to return it as a dictionary. So I'll say to dict, which will convert the data frame to the equivalent dictionaries. Okay, so now let's quickly run through it. So I have this my file upload endpoint here. So I have this my upload file endpoint here. I am checking for the file if it is CSV. So if it is CSV, so now if you want to allow Excel document or stuff, you just need to add it here now, and then you now need to change here to whatever you're doing. Okay, so now that I am first checking for the file if it's supported, then I am reading. After reading, then I am doing the file parsing from this particular line here. So definitely this guy is going to be returning the dictionary representation. So I'm going to say this is the file, which is my file data. Actually, let me say this is my file data. Now instead of me returning status upload successful, I want to now return my file data. Okay, so basically this is what I want to do. So I'll come in here. Okay, I made a mistake here. So it is import pandas as pd, then pd with csv. Okay, and also I made a mistake here. Actually it is return, not return. Okay, alright, so that is a beautiful thing about actually opening more than one terminal, because you get to look at all your files at once and then just correct them, and then you just, at a glance, you just know what's going on. All right, so I think all is good actually. Yeah, all is good. So I'm going to save this. And then I also save this, and then our server is going to reload. Then once it's done reloading, I definitely want to go to this my API again, refresh. Now if I select if I select this particular file parser again, click on execute, file type not supported. Now if I click on this now, encoded deleted CSV. And now let's talk about the encoding. Now it is we are assuming now that the encoding of this our file is going to be in UTF-8. Now if the encoding is not in UTF-8, which by default it is, actually majority of all these our files, they kind of do the encoding in UTF-8. But if it isn't, you definitely want to prepare for that one. Make a situation whereby it's not UTF-8 compatible. So definitely you want to be trying like the Latin 1 and stuff like that. Okay, so now I have a CSV file now. So click on execute, and then let's see. Okay, I'm having an internal server error. So what is it? So I am having on line 24 in our upload file, file reader read file. Okay, so definitely I haven't imported it yet. So that's a mistake, a terrible one at that. So file reader. Okay, so back to opening this down. Okay, back to opening our file reader. Alright, so our application is done. So click on execute. Now voila, you can see this is the content of the CSV file. And then if I go to my terminal, you can see I have it's being printed now, because as you can see this dot specifying that there are spaces. Now if I close this, thank God that we're done. We're actually done here. So I will just close this particular file and then close this particular pane, and then I would come back here to re-execute the same thing. Now if I go back, now you can see it's now much more spread out. So you can see, so this is when I rerun that particular stuff again. Now you can see this is twice I clicked on it to run it. This is the first time, and then this is the second time. So you can see it. So this is what I basically have. Now if you come and look at the response, you can see here that the key here now. This is the key, and then this is the values, right? So this is basically for each column, like the item column, the category column, the model column, and stuff like that. So basically this is how you actually accept file from your API, and then you parse that file, you process that file.